Hello, good evening, and welcome to the WeCare Wellness podcast. I am Cheyenne Kramer, one of the co-founders of the WeCare Partnerships Network, and we come to you almost every month to share with you new ideas and new information that you may not heard of in other places to help you become more wellness empowered. That's part of the mission of WeCare Partnerships. As you can see on my background, we're talking about pursuing health, wealth, and peace for all. So, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And I'm really, really grateful to Miss Joetta that she's been doing these podcasts and taking time out of her busy schedule, bringing on some fabulous guests so that you have the opportunity to learn how to take more control over your own health and well-being. So WeCare Partnerships is all about that. We're always looking for new members to become part of our wellness initiatives, our peaceful communities initiatives, as well as our prosperity initiatives. So if you're in business and you hear this and you're interested in learning more, consider becoming part of one of our teams. We'd love to have you. But tonight we're going to turn this over to Miss Joetta, and she is going to interview and dialogue with my good friend Tiffany Hunter. And Tiffany is known as an emotional root coach. And if you don't know what that is, you're going to want to hang around and learn, because if you don't understand some of the roots of some of the emotions that we carry with us, you have no idea what they might be doing to your body. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Joetta, and take it away, my dear.
Thank you, Cheyenne, and good evening, everyone, and good evening, Tiffany. This evening, we have a truly insightful podcast discussion where we're going to be reflecting on a topic that impacts every one of us, our emotions and our health. And we have with us Tiffany Hunter. And as Cheyenne gave her an introduction, she actually is a native of Detroit, Michigan, my hometown as well. And she's also the host of the Healthy Entrepreneur under the Every.Black Entrepreneur Podcast Network. Her show is dedicated to helping the entrepreneur protect their biggest asset, their well-being. Tiffany holds a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Michigan in psychology, and she's also a Montessori teacher, also holds a Montessori teacher certification from North American Montessori Center, in which she has worked in the child care profession for over 15 years. In 2014, she began a path to pursue a career in holistic healing. And while on this path, she also began teaching monthly health classes at her family's church, Divine Power Ministries, where she was a resident pastor. Her new and additional passion became teaching holistic approaches to heal the mind, body, and spirit. In 2016, she relocated from Detroit to Raleigh, North Carolina, where she currently resides and works as the host of the Healthy Entrepreneur podcast, which addresses the health concerns of the entrepreneur and introduces them to alternative approaches to healthcare, which are both natural and holistic. The show focuses on the healing of the whole person, mind, body, and soul, and teaches them to connect to their inner healer, which is a permanent part of our DNA, and helps entrepreneurs to see that they already possess the power to be healed. As the host of the Healthy Entrepreneur, Tiffany was awarded the 2021 Podcaster of the Year award from the Every.Black Entrepreneur Podcast Network and nominated again in 2022. Tiffany, she joyfully served as the ambassador for WeCare Partnerships for Raleigh, North Carolina from 2022 and 2023. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Tiffany. And I'm really excited to discuss this topic with you. So let's begin by defining this connection. Why are our emotions and health so intricately linked? I mean,
Yes.
let's talk about that. Why would you say they're so intricately linked?
Yes. Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm honored to be here. Great question. And I would say, we have to start with understanding that, our spiritual self is mind, body, and spirit, right? So all three parts, even though they're separate, we are connected and they become one. That's, us walking in our wholeness, right? And so I always say it's hard to kind of describe this uh, school of thought to people because first you have to believe that mind, body, and spirit are connected. And some people do not. Some people think everything is separate. Our mind, body, and spirit is separate. And so let me just give a quick little note. I told you the Lord gave me so many things, and so some things I just kind of want to read from as well. That's going to help guide, our conversation. So first, let's look at emotions and what emotions are. Right, emotions are a simple form of energy that runs through our bodies like an electrical current. It is energy in motion, right? Each emotion has its own measurable energy frequency that we can vibrate in. So, love is the highest frequency. And that would make sense, right? Because God is love. So, love is the highest frequency. Where when you look at emotions like hate and fear and guilt, they vibrate on that lower end of the frequency. So, negative emotions weaken the body and our holy temples, where positive emotions strengthen our body. And I think sometimes it's hard to kind of talk about this with people because they understand like stress can affect your health, but they don't understand emotions, right? And what I try to explain to them, like I said, it's that energy emotion, right? So maybe if I say the stress of emotions, that can help those that may be listening and may kind of like, not really know that school of thought, right? So the stress of the negative emotions that we walk in and we live in every day can cause harm to our bodies. Okay. And so research, believe it or not, is starting to confirm, what has been said since biblical days. So when our mind and mental state are out of balance, our physical bodies, our spiritual life, and our overall well-being and quality of life is affected. Okay. And so the science and the Bible shows us that our mind, body, and spirit are intricately interconnected and woven together. Okay. So that when one is afflicted or affected, the other two suffer. Okay. So let's look at it this way, like I mentioned a little bit earlier. The Bible says in Genesis 1:26, let us make man in our image after our likeness. So who is us and who is our? It's the Holy Trinity. It's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. They are separate but one at the same time, under the Godhead, right? So our Creator made us in this likeness, mind, body, and spirit, separate but one at the same time. Um,
So, what a
and
thought
so,
that
mhm,
comes to me, Tiffany, is that let's say you're talking about stress, and
yes,
let's say you have a negative emotion like anxiety or anger.
hmm
This can lead to a range of, let's say, health problems like digestive issues,
hmm
cardiovascular issues, a weakened immune system. That's
hmm
what, that type of emotion I'm thinking when you're talking, I'm thinking that can happen, for example. Is that what you're saying?
that is true. That is true. The stress of walking in anger,
Right.
okay, causes physical symptoms in our body. And so it's so I'll just put it like this because this is, we said we two sisters talking, right?
Right.
So this is what I believe. Okay, God tells us how we are supposed to behave and act
Hmm.
as Christians, right? So if we're acting outside of that, then there has to be a consequence for that, right?
Hmm.
And so a lot of times, and my belief is that when you are at walking outside of that, alignment with God, that the consequence shows up in your physical behavior. So when you're looking at anger, and people who can't control their temper, and get angry at every little thing, irritated, always kind of in that bad mood or disposition, right? You can cause things like depression and high blood pressure and heart attacks and headaches and thyroid problems. And we don't see that. We don't see the connections. We think it is separate, So, what you said is absolutely true. It does, show itself in our bodies. It's like our bodies is kind of a mirror between, you know what I'm saying, our emotions and our physical health. It's our physical health is mirroring what is going on in our emotional space, in our mental state.
So this can also impact, I'm sure, our behavioral effects, like unhealthy coping mechanisms, maybe overeating, smoking, drinking, which also impacts your health.
Yes.
I'm thinking also, let's say positive emotions, like if you're happy about something, that can boost your immune system, just like negative emotions can, cause your immune system to go down. So a strong immune system is good for, let's say, protecting the body against infections and disease, whereas a weak immune system doesn't necessarily help you fight against infections and diseases. So I would think that a correlation is also there as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's 100% correct. Because when you're looking at how to turn your situation around, it's one of the things that you can even use is laughter. Like laughter is a technique to turn some of your ailments around, because when we laugh, okay, it produces those endorphins that
Yes.
releases those chemicals, right? That helps our body to get out of the stress of that particular emotion.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And, we laugh a lot,
Yeah.
people that are in such dire situations, they use laughter. You see sometimes people who are just in such dire situations, and they find humor and laughter, and you're like trying to figure out, why are these people so happy when you wouldn't expect for them to be happy, but they have found a way to find laughter. And sometimes those people, they live to be a long old age,
Yes.
because this is just a way. Sometimes they're very religious, sometimes they believe in God,
Yes.
this is just what they have: a strong social support, a strong social network, a strong family support system.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
just see that, and many people don't understand that.
They don't. And those are people that, despite what life has thrown their way, has decided, I'm going to still be joyful in the midst of my situation. And
Yes.
so that joy and that happiness, helps their body to turn that particular illness or condition around, And when you were talking, it reminded me of something that I just watched recently a couple of days ago. It was a documentary on Netflix, and it was talking about the blue zones. And the blue zones are areas across the world where people are actually living to past 100 years old. And some of the things they were showing in their culture was how happy they are and how much they enjoy life and the support system that they give to those that are elderly. And I was surprised to know that they didn't even have nursing homes in these places, or this, the part of the world. because they don't believe in putting, the elderly into a care facility and then leaving them. No, they encompass all that. And then their eating habits, right? So it's those positive moods. They had very good eating habits. They had very good exercise regimens. I mean, the people who were living past 100 were still out and about, working in the yard, walking down the streets. They were still a very, important and critical part of the community. And so you're right. When people are choosing to live their life in such a way of peace and harmony and love and joy and happiness, then that does play a part in the health habits and the healthy lifestyles that we choose to, walk in and create.
Yeah, because sometimes you'll find some of the wealthiest people on earth who have all the money in the world, okay, and access to the best doctors in the world. But there's so much anger and bitterness and infighting among them that it doesn't work. But yet you have others who are able to survive because they have that happiness.
That's true. That's
And
true.
it's amazing.
It is. It is. But that just shows you how much our emotions, right, and our mental state and emotional health plays a part in our lifestyle, in our world. Like what makes you passionate? What makes you, motivated to do certain things in the world, and how do you want to show up, right? Even though I have all this money right behind me, and doing all of these things, and got the jets and the yacht and all of these things, right, living this very wonderful rich lifestyle. But if I am still dealing with some kind of emotional trauma, I'm still walking around in bitterness, unforgiveness and things like that, it's still going to play out in my health.
Yeah, because you also have, let's say, the people who don't have money, they don't necessarily always have access to the best diet,
Exactly.
unlike the wealthy people who do have money.
Hmm.
But let's say, the ones that don't have money, who come from a more lower social economic background, who don't have access to the best diet, their emotions, who are happier, their immune system seems to be able to fight off the infections because they're happier. They have
Hmm.
more of a support system,
Yes.
and they're
Yes.
able to fight off the immune systems. I mean, you have to look at that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because in this documentary that I was looking at with the blue zones, right? These were not wealthy people that they were studying. These were your everyday people who probably just lived on somewhat of meager means. You know what I'm saying? They were happy, and they were living long, healthy lives, because it wasn't so much about the materialistic things of the world. It was more rooted in how do we walk in that peace and that harmony, right? In that emotional state of wellness, because they see things. It's their perception. They see things differently. They don't see the world as it's all about being rich and having all these material things. They see the world differently as, what is my what's my passion? What am I sitting here for? What is my assignment for the world, for the community? What am I supposed to be doing? They're more or less, giving of themselves, and trying to make the world a better place that way.
What about psychosomatic illnesses? How does that play in our emotions and health?
So, like I said, as an emotional root coach, you I would say, okay, that probably about 85% of our illnesses or more are connected to negative emotions. And so there's so many people that are walking around with trauma that, they've never dealt with. So many people walking around in that anger, in that bitterness, in that guilt, in the fear, and it's playing out in their health. And I'll just use myself for an example. I'll just, be transparent. I had a trauma that happened to me back in my 20s. And I just dealt with it probably a couple of weeks ago through a therapy session. And so I never knew some of the things I was doing or decisions that I was making had to still do with that trauma that I was going with. My issue with weight, okay, was due in part to this trauma that I never dealt with when it happened. But it, rose up in this particular therapy session. And then I had, probably what you would call like an emotional breakdown. Okay. And then, okay, because when we're going through all of this, like you said, it lowers our immune system, right? So then the next day, I got sick and sicker. And then I tested myself, I had COVID. And so, if you're not a believer that your emotions are connected to your health, you would look at it as it was two separate incidents, right? But because of who I am, I was like, I knew that that was my body's way of dealing with this trauma that I had just dealt with and released. And so it lowered my immune system. Okay. And we can say the stress of it if we need to, right? The stress of the trauma it lowered my immune system. And so that's how I got so sick with COVID, instantly. And I'm not saying that everything happens that instantly. I'm just saying because I'm aware, I understood what was going on and how my body was trying to deal with the trauma that I had, that emotional trauma I had went through many years ago.
So suppressing those emotions and not dealing with them can lead to a weakened immune system or lead to illnesses and diseases and poor health.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in dealing with that, I realized that that trauma had actually contributed to me having weight issues, because weight issues uh, is connected to unresolved anger, and depending on what part of the body will tell you what unresolved anger you're dealing with. Does it have to deal with a parent? Does it have to deal with something that happened in your childhood? It's different anger issues, and each body represents something different, right? So I had connected the two together, like, oh, okay, this is why all my adult life I was having issues with being overweight, as some, doctors would classify or whatever, and never could really get my weight the way I wanted it to. And it was because I had this unresolved emotional trauma that I had never dealt with. And it was playing in the background, right? And it was guiding the decisions that I was making throughout my life.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Um, so what strategies then or practices can individuals use to release these or manage these negative emotions, do you think, to improve their health?
Yes. So I would start with um, one of, God's scriptures, right? I would say it starts with Romans 12:2, and that's don't copy the behaviors and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Okay, then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. And so the process of true healing from emotional trauma is that we have to let go of the past and forgive others as well as forgive ourselves. Because there's some forgiveness I had to even give to myself in dealing with the trauma I was just, telling you about. And so, we have to be able to, you know, forgive others from the hurt or the disappointment that we believed was caused. Okay. Because sometimes it's our perception of the situation that causes the trauma. But, if you're have a life coach or a therapist, you can talk these things out so that you can see things through a different lens. Okay, that will help us. And now it's about, your perception of what happened and the way you choose to handle the situation. So this takes time to change the situation from something negative that happened to you into a lesson well learned, or to also understand that it wasn't your fault. Okay. And so forgiveness is seen as the instant cure, okay, to heal any disease that you may have. But first, you have to release the hope that the past could have been anything different than what it was. And so now, you can work on trying to release these emotional traumas and feelings that you're going through. And I mean, we just talked about laughing. That's one way of releasing, is laughing or smiling, even if you don't feel like it, because it releases that chemistry, and changes our chemical imbalance that puts our body into a healing, um, situation. And so laughter, is great. You can try exercising, okay, because exercising also releases negative emotions and also releases those endorphins that we're talking about to make us feel good. You can try meditation, okay, that's a good way of being able to become one with your body, right? And being able to just center yourself. And also, it helps you to see um, the situation, or the issue or whatever you've gone through that has created this negative emotion. It helps you to see it in a different light.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And there's so many other things. I mean, there's emotional freedom technique that is out there, that there are therapists with this particular specialty that can teach you how to tap the emotional a negative emotion, out of you, to release it. Sound therapy is good as well. I listen to sound therapy every night, and so I'm a big advocate of sound therapy. And it's because we vibrate in
What is
different.
sound therapy?
So sound therapy. Um, when I spoke earlier, I was talking about the frequency, right? That energy, emotions is energy in motion, and that how we vibrate in different frequencies. Love being, the highest frequency. Well, sound therapy has different, I would say, like music, okay, or binaural beats that can uh, match itself with different frequencies and help your body to go into a healing mode. Okay. And so there is sound therapy just for about everything, even down to, I'll play it if my daughter suffered with cramps. There's sound therapies that says this sound therapy will help relieve cramps instantly. And so it is a wonderful tool and technique. And like I said, I listen to it just about every night. It depends on, what I'm going through or what I may be feeling, especially if you're feeling like anxious and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I listen to a lot of healing. This will heal your body, mind, body, spirit, and things like this. And it just helps put me to sleep.
Okay. Well, with you at Holy Living as the Holy Living Health Coaching, do
Hmm.
you counsel any of your clients on their emotions and health?
Yes, absolutely. And the ones I would say that I have dealt with the most have been those that kind of have been suffering from diabetes.
Okay.
And because The emotional connection to diabetes is that you feel as though there's no more sweetness in life.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's no more joy. You have no more joy about life. And when we start to talk and see what that may be connected to, most times it's been connected to, grief. They lost somebody that meant the world to them. And it's like their world stopped right then and there when they lost that person. And to them, they feel like it's nothing left in the world. There's no goodness, there's no sweetness, I don't have anything. And so when you feel that way and when you vibrate in that energy and the stress of the grief, okay, that you're dealing with walking in and day out for years, then it starts to manifest in your health. And a lot of times I have found that it's manifesting in those that have been diagnosed with diabetes.
That's interesting that you say that, because my brother passed away from diabetes, and he was someone that I felt that all the sweetness in his life had gone away. But
Mm-hmm.
I have always heard that diabetes could be reversed.
Mm-hmm.
I've always heard that. So that's very interesting that you say that. But
Mm-hmm.
so in counseling your clients, how do you what is one of the strategies that you use in counseling them with respect to their health?
Well, first it has to begin, I would say, like with talk therapy. Like we
Mhm.
have to really dig deep, okay? And so there's some things or some issues that we have to confront that we might not want to confront, but that's the only way we're going to get to the healing. And so it's kind of like it's one of my favorite little kitty shows, but Shrek, right? Shrek got layers. And so that talk therapy helps you to get through the layers so that you can get to the root. All right. And then once we get to the root, then we can now together we can customize a plan to help you to get back on the road to recovery and to, get back to achieving optimum wellness. But until we deal with that emotional root, nothing will really help. You can try to do things on the physical realm and spiritual realm as well, but if the person doesn't want to sit and get to the root cause of their issue, it's always going to be out of balance. Even if the illnesses looks like it's kind of reversed itself, but if that emotional root is never dealt with, it won't do anything but come back. 'Cause
Well, you also have a holistic approach too. So in your holistic, if you're looking at it from a holistic sense,
Mhm.
how can addressing emotional well-being benefit not only physical health, but also spiritually and the overall quality of life?
Yes. So, um, in that holistic approach, you also have to be open, okay, to the holistic approach. And so, it's going to take into account mind, body, and spirit. And I'll just use myself as an example. So, many years ago, I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, right? And I have been on medication for like 20 years, right? And I was going to the doctors and I was trying to seek help. And I was always trying to say, what can I do to get off this medication? Because I don't want to be on this medication for the rest of my life. I mean, when you're on medication, it starts to, you know, um, it starts to harm and hurt your liver. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was very concerned about that. And the doctors that I was going to didn't have any plan in mind for me to get me off of the medication. So what I did is I started praying and I started asking God to show me the entry point of when this happened to me that has caused this hypothyroidism.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so he had me to start writing letters to my younger self. And I started doing that. And I started addressing things that had happened to me that had caused major disappointment in my life or that I was hurt. And so as I was doing this, he took me to a place of when I was a little kid and I was in the room with all of my family and we was watching those home movies. I don't know if you remember that when they would put up the screen and watch the home movies and
Mm-hmm.
everybody was in the movies but me. And so I was just like, wow, we do this every holiday, but I don't never see me in the picture. So I remember asking somebody, one of my family members, and they were like, oh, I don't know. I never got an answer. But I do remember going back to my room and crying because I said, wow, nobody sees me. Nobody loved me enough to take pictures of me or put me in the whole movie, right? Well, living my whole life like that had caused me to have thyroid issues because your thyroid is connected to, or at least hypothyroidism is, I should say, is connected to feeling invisible, feeling like you don't have a voice. You're not seen. Nobody loves and cares about you. And so once I dealt with that and went back and started to heal the little child in me, okay, and once I started to understand that just because of that incident didn't mean that nobody loved and cared about me. And come to find out, talking to my mom about it, she was like, oh, well, you were a little baby. So either one, you wasn't born yet, or two, she said it could have been when I was separating from your father because he didn't see you for a long period of time. And that could be why you're not in the films and the whole movies. And I was like, oh, wow. So all this time I'm thinking one thing, right? It's about changing your perception. It's about looking at it, from a different lens to understand what really happened so that you can work through and release, that emotional trauma that you're gone through.
Yeah, because sometimes when you perceive things, it's not always what you think.
Right,
There could have been another reason for why something happened or transpired.
right,
Yeah.
right. Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
what you're saying is that um, the to address something from a holistic perspective means that you look at it from that different perspective. That's what you're
Yes,
saying.
yes,
Okay.
yes, yes, yes. We got to change our lens of how we saw the situation, you know. And sometimes it means we got to accept responsibility too for, where we're currently at. Um, and sometimes it takes us putting on our big boy or girl um, pants
Mhm.
and accepting responsibility for that. And, understand from the spiritual point too that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And so, once we understand that too, I think that helps us to be able to change our lens and see things from a different perspective when you understand that part from the spiritual realm.
Yeah, that's very true. Um, Share with us some other personal stories or testimonies of other individuals who've actually improved their health by addressing their emotional well-being.
Sure. So actually, what I do is I talk about my mom because she was my first client.
Okay.
you know, you know how you actually go into something and your family or your friend is your first client. And
Mm-hmm.
so with my mom, she was on a counter full of medicine and she was pretty much bedridden, I would say, and dealing with so many things, heart problems and thyroid problems and, blood pressure, having seizures. Just it was so much she was going through. And so as we were moving here to Raleigh, North Carolina from Michigan, I asked my mom, I was like, would you mind if I became your coach, your emotional root coach? And maybe we can sit and kind of talk through things and we can see with each, illness, what's it connected to? Would you mind if I did that? And she was like, absolutely not. And I was really surprised that my mom opened up to me. But by her opening up to me when we first got here to Raleigh, North Carolina, we were able to, be able to pinpoint where the emotional root was. And we were able to be able to change her perspective of what happened to her, even on the way to childhood. And
Mm-hmm.
so once she saw things in a different light, the physical body started to get well to the point where she got off all her medication.
That's a blessing.
And I was so blessed. And she was up, she was moving around. Matter of fact, she started volunteering at a nursing home that was not too far. She could walk to it. It was like a couple of blocks. And sometimes she would walk there, sometimes she would get a ride. But she was so fulfilled. Like, oh my God, I now I'm healthy. I can get out. I got purpose. I can live my life. And so it really turned things around for her.
Wow. And she had basically been somewhat incapacitated due to all the different medications.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. That
Hmm.
and all those medications she had somewhat been constricted by.
Hmm. Yes. Because when you're on so many medications like that, you is side effects, and then you have to take medication for the side effects,
Yeah.
and you know what I'm saying, and it's just compounded medication until it leaves you hopeless,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay, so this is how I'm going to live my life. I'm going to be on all this medication for the rest of my life. So I know part of it was even depression
Mm-hmm.
because she just had lost hope.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Another example, like that's your mother. It's great that you had your mother to start out with. How about some other examples?
Well, let's see. Let's see. I'm trying to see what I can use to make sure I just don't, if somebody's listening, want to know. But
You
so
mentioned
I'll
that.
use this. Go
No,
ahead.
I was saying you mentioned that a lot of your clients, for example, have diabetes.
Hmm.
Is there an example you could give us of someone who has had diabetes and it's been reversed?
I don't have anybody that has been reversed that I know of, but I have seen where it has improved and they have had a better quality of life, or some of their symptoms have gotten better. So
Okay.
I will say that. Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Um, any other personal stories or testimonies?
Well, the one I was just thinking of right before you asked me that one was one who was actually dealing with breast cancer, and me and her worked together, and we dealt with the emotional connection to that. We prayed, we changed a lot of her eating habits, um, added a lot of herbal supplements as well. And when she went back, the cancer was no longer there, and it was in a early stage as well that it was I guess reversed or whatever, but it was no longer there. And so the doctors were really amazed at how she turned herself around and how her health turned itself around in a pretty, quickly manner. But that's goes to say that was somebody who believed that the mind, body, and spirit was all connected, and who was had a lot of faith, a lot of faith.
How can someone identify if their physical symptoms might be rooted in unresolved emotional issues? Would there be any types of red flags to look out for?
Well, first I would say one, like I keep saying, you have to believe, right, that your emotions are connected to your physical health. And then after that, whenever you're diagnosed or you have a symptom, you have to look at like, okay, what has happened to my life in this last 12 or 18 months, right? Because a lot of times those in the holistic community, feel as though that in the last 12 or 18 months of our lives, like if you have a traumatic situation, it will manifest itself in that time frame, right? But if not, then it could be something like I dealt with that was a past trauma that I buried that was many years ago. And so there's not always a red flag. But what I can say, like for me and me dealing with the situation I just dealt with a couple of weeks ago, the memory first started coming up. So I had buried it and hadn't thought anything about it. But the memory started coming up. And I was like, oh my God, why is this memory coming up? Like I buried it, But because I am on a healing journey and I'm really trying to reach that optimal wellness that God says we can have, the memory started coming up. And then in my therapy session, as we were talking and we happened to talk about traumas that had happened to us, then it just bubbled up and I dealt with it and it came out. So it was like it was ready to surface itself because of all the other things I was dealing with in trying to get to that, that healthy state, that optimal wellness state. And so, I would say that, it's a lot of times you have to look at um, your childhood and things that might have happened to you as a child that, you never talked about and that needs to be dealt with so that you can have a healthy life. But it's being willing to be able to go down that pathway of what is the emotional root to it.
So you're saying that if someone has, let's say, some issues health wise, okay?
Hmm.
Let's say maybe they have chronic back pain, and maybe
Yeah.
they don't realize why they have chronic back pain.
Hmm.
Maybe they might want to sit down and say, are there some issues, that I'm angry about? Are there some deep seated anger, or do I have some repressed feelings that go back years ago that maybe might want to sit down and talk to a therapist about? And or has something gone down and transpired in the last 18 months that I might want to look at, that maybe I'm harboring some resentment, that's causing this chronic back pain? Is that what you're saying? Those are things that I might want to look at, or someone might want to look at if they're feeling these types of ailments?
Exactly, exactly. That is exactly right. Because our back problems come from a lack of support. So, and depending on the area of the back, will tell us what kind of support you may be feeling you don't have. So, like the lower back is like financial support and financial problems. Or sometimes it could be your back is hurting because you don't feel supported by your family and what you're doing. Maybe you have wit and you have this new business endeavor, but you don't feel supported, by your friends and your family. That can cause back pain as well. So absolutely, it's about the only way we're going to get there is we have to, be willing to sit down and talk about what's going in your life and what's the possibilities that you could be experiencing the issue that you're dealing with.
Okay. It's an interesting area. I mean, so these issues in terms of emotions and health, it's probably impacting, I would say, at least, let's say, 75% of the population.
Yes, 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 yes,
I mean,
yes.
that's why the pharmaceutical industry is making so much money, Tiffany.
Right, right. And maybe that's why they don't want to deal with your emotional state, and they see it as separate, right?
Yeah,
Because it's more money for them to, put us on medication than to actually try to deal with our emotional and mental state, right?
except
And
for
try to help us to heal.
antidepressant medication.
Yep, that too. That too. Right.
I
They want us
mean,
to be on that.
they'll give you plenty of that.
Plenty. Plenty. With a zero copay.
Exactly. Exactly. And sometimes, from what I've heard, it'll make you just feel like you like, like you're a
Yes.
zombie or something.
Exactly, exactly. And that's one of the reasons that kind of motivated me in the beginning because with me being a Montessori teacher, I was seeing the kids come into my Montessori preschool, being just diagnosed with ADHD, but the medication that they had them on was making them like zombies. They were so out of it, and they were not themselves. Like their personality had just changed, and that hurt my heart. And so that's one of the reasons, that motivated me to really start looking into holistic ways and modalities. And I was sharing them with their family, so that in hopes that they could wean them off of that medication, because I'm just like, they're not the same child. They're just, it was like the life had been zapped out of them. And that's heartbreaking when you see 4 year, 3 and 4 year olds come in, and the life and the spunk that they had running around has been zapped out of them. So absolutely, yeah, that medication is saddening and heartbreaking what it does to our children and to all of us that's on it. Hmm.
Yeah. And children at that age, they don't need to have their brains,
No.
slowed down off of medication. I mean, who knows what
Yeah.
that stuff is doing to them, really?
Exactly, exactly. Yes. So,
Oh, I see
absolutely.
some comments up here. I don't know what it's saying. Looks like more than 95% of the population. Um, I don't know what they're saying, but more than 95% of the population. Cheyenne said that maybe she's saying that to something. But seems like someone is responding to us.
Okay.
We haven't been watching the comments, but we're getting some comments.
Uh-oh, uh-oh.
We weren't keeping up to the comment with the comments, but obviously people have been following along.
Okay, okay, great. Well, I
So
hope they're getting something out of it.
yeah,
Yes.
it looks like they are. Oh, and now someone's saying having emotional related illnesses. So another thing,
Hmm.
I guess we have like about another 7 minutes, but what are
Okay.
to sort of ended up like? What are some practical takeaways or tips that you can give or provide to viewers and listeners here to help them better navigate their emotional well-being and its impact on their health?
Yes, that's a good question. So, like I mentioned before, like first, I would say we really have to become one with our bodies, okay? And we have to tap into our spiritual self. We have gotten so busy, right, that we have just neglected our physical bodies, our mental state, our spiritual, wellness, because we're so distracted. And I want to say, I'm going to just go out there and say, I think it's just a trick of the enemy. He wants us to be distracted, right? He
Yep.
wants us to be out there doing everything besides what we're supposed to do for ourselves, our well-being, and for the kingdom of God. So yeah, so first I would say become one with your body, okay, because your body will speak to you when you take the time to stop and listen. Okay. So try, like I said, meditation, try journaling, reading the word of God, listening to Bible devotions. All of these things help you to become centered and help you to become one with yourself. And I think once you know who you are, okay, and whose you are, that drastically changed the trajectory of your health journey. I know for me, learning like what my name means and connecting to my purpose in life really helped me to stay centered on my health and my wellness, mind, body, spirit. Okay. And, for me, my name means the appearance of God, and it means daughter of the heavens. And every day I try to live my life on assignment for God and try to be mindful of how I take care of God's holy temple, right? Mind, body, and spirit. They are all together, interconnected, right? And that's by keeping my mind on the word of God, being alert, okay, to the healthy and holistic ways that I can take care of my physical body, and then staying in a right relationship with God and learning how to worship Him, more and more every day. So that would be some of my, I guess, practical tips.
Well, you've really given us a lot, Tiffany, and we've enjoyed so much, all the insight that you've shared with us. For those of you who are interested in contacting Tiffany, you can contact her at www.holyliving.wix site. You can also contact her at holyliving@yahoo.com. You can contact her on Facebook at Holy Living Health Coaching, Instagram, and Healthy Entrepreneur _radio show. I think I got them all right. Did I do it right, Tiffany? Did I catch everything right there?
I believe so. Did you mention TikTok? I'm on TikTok too.
Wait a minute, TikTok.
I got on TikTok just not too long ago.
Let's. No, I did mention TikTok. So
okay.
So tell us where you are on TikTok.
So I'm at Tiffany Hunter 1111 on TikTok.
Okay. So I'm sure anyone who reaches out to Tiffany will benefit from her coaching, because she's definitely given us a wonderful coaching session tonight and shared some wonderful insight to us on emotions and health, and learned a lot about, some of the pointers in terms of going in and having to get at the root of things and looking back on, if you have some issues there, you need to address what's been going on for childhood and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Tiffany, we'd love for you to come back and talk with us sometime in the future.
Would love to.
Okay, because there's some topics you could go even more in depth on. We just barely covered the surface there.
Yes.
So I'm so glad you joined us. We love having you there.
Thank
So
you.
everyone, thank you for joining us tonight. And
Yes.
we're going to end our streaming here. So good night, everyone.
Good night.